Today, I'm going to discuss the previous reparations the United States gave to U.S. American citizens over the years. Do you think that the United States government owes Black Americans reparations? Today, we will get into it. Don't forget, it's the Bulldogs, the tribe. Like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The Homestead Act of 1860. The U.S. gave financial assets to white citizens in the Homestead Act of 1860. It is reported that the U.S. gave 1.5 million white families in the U.S. 160-acre land grants under the Homestead Act of 1860. Some 45 million white living Americans are benefiting from this act to this day. The Homestead Act encouraged migration by providing settlers with 160 acres of land in exchange for a nominal fee, something as low as 25 cents, with little provisions, a 5-year requirement of continuous residence, and the settlers had to be citizens or becoming citizens. Congress had trouble passing the Homestead Act early on. They were granting land to settlers in other states, so it was nothing new. For example, Oregon Land Act from December 1st, 1950 to December 1st, 1853, where married settlers could obtain 640 acres and single settlers could receive 320 acres in Oregon. Also, the Armed Occupation Act of August 4th, 1942, it gave 160 acres of land to armed Florida settlers who could protect themselves from Indians. So yes, you heard that right. Your government was providing land to citizens who could protect themselves from the indigenous people of the Americas. Now, I know you were probably thinking that the settlers were needed for colonization, but one must understand the impact that this benefited whites substantially more than black slaves. There were many who opposed the idea of free land because they thought it would create free spoilers, which was a coalition party that opposed the expansion of slavery. The ones who opposed thought it would create new anti-slavery states, which would then cause an imbalance in the Senate and destroy the South's control. The Civil Liberties of 1988. In World War II, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States relocated and incarcerated at least 125,000 people of Japanese descent in 75 distinct incarceration sites. They were initiated by President at the time, Franklin D. Roosevelt, via Executive Order of 9066. We all heard of the Imperial Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor from school, and this is also what kicked off World War II. Now, the government wrongly imprisoned these citizens, but they rewarded them generously. With the help of the Japanese American Citizens League. Yup, that's right. There's Jimmy Carter and President Joe Biden discussing whether or not the United States had been justified by the concentration camps. Jimmy Carter commissioned the wartime relocation and internment of civilians to investigate these camps. Yes, the president commissioned an agency to see if the U.S. was justified, and they stated that it came back little evidence of Japanese disloyalty. And at the time, they concluded it was a matter of racism and recommended the government pay reparations. As you take a look at these photos, it looks like they just asked American Japanese citizens to just pick up a backhoe and start racking the ground. They're in the current garments. They don't look disheveled or depressed. It doesn't look like they're in containment camps at all. However, it wasn't until 1988 Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 on behalf of the U.S. A payment of $20,000, equivalent to $49,000 in 2022 to each detainee who was alive at the time. It stated race, prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership was the cause. By 1992, the U.S. disbursed more than $1.6 billion, equivalent to $3.96 billion in 2022 and reparations to 82,000 Japanese Americans who were incarcerated. So once again, the United States government has paid reparations to citizens who were wrongfully incarcerated. Here are a few conditions the United States agreed to under the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. They acknowledge the fundamental injustice of the evacuation, relocation, and internment of U.S. citizens and permanent residents, aliens of Japanese ancestry during World War II. 2. They apologize on behalf of the United States for the evacuation, relocation, and internment of such citizens and permanent residents. They also provided a public education fund to finance efforts to inform the public about the internment of such individuals so as to prevent the reoccurrence of any similar event, which is why most Americans can remember this internment camp and concentration camp of the time after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Indian Claims Act of 1946. The Indian Claims Commission was an arbiter for relations between the United States and Native American tribes. The Indian Claims Act of 1946 was established by Congress to hear long-standing claims against the United States. It took up until the 21st century for the last claim to be settled. Think about how not long ago that was. The commission was created to thank Indians for their service in World War II, as well as relieve anxiety and resentment caused by the United States' history of colonization of indigenous people. Yes, you heard that right. It was to relieve anxiety and resentment. The U.S. offered monetary compensation for territories lost as a result of broken federal treaties. Indian tribes wanted their land, but the United States government will only grant on payments based upon a net acreage of the Indians' lost land. So yes, reparations again. District of Columbia Emancipation Act of 1862. April 16, 1862 was the abolition of slavery in the District of Columbia. 3,000 slaves were freed 8 months before January 1st, 1863's Emancipation Proclamation, which freed liberated slaves in the South. However, District of Columbia was the only part of the United States who compensated slave owners for freeing slaves. Yes, you heard that correct. They paid slave owners for every slave that they gave up. Former slave owners who were loyal to the Union received up to $300 per free slave. That is equivalent to $9,000 per slave in 2023. It is reported that they approved 930 petitions from former slave owners for the freedom of 2,989 former slaves, which will be equivalent to $27 million in 2023. It's the Bulldog signing out. What do you think about reparations being paid to black citizens? And don't forget, there are many different types of bulldogs. English bulldogs, American bulldogs, French bulldogs, English bulldog terriers, just to name a few. Choose your side, like, comment, and subscribe. It's the Bulldog, the Tribe.
We them boys, just like Wiz, dog. In the yard, you know we the big dogs. Going hard, lock jaw, like no pit dog. In case you ain't know, it's the Bulldog. 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 Going hard, lock jaw, like no pit dog. In case you ain't know, it's the